Welcome, colleagues, students, guests, family, and friends around the world to the Fall 2020 Tucker Center for Research on Girls and Women in Sports annual distinguished lecture titled Black Women in Sport, Voices of Resistance and Athlete Activism. I'm Dr. Nicole Lavoie, Director of the Tucker Center. Thank you so much for joining us for a much anticipated and what I know will be a fantastic lecture and discussion. The Tucker Center was established in 1993 with a generous gift from Dr. Dorothy Tucker, a 1945 graduate of the University of Minnesota in the School of Kinesiology. Our founder and first director was Professor Emerita Mary Jo Kane. The Tucker Center was the first, and at that time, the only such research center that was established within a major research university solely dedicated to making a difference in the lives of girls and women in sport. Here at the Tucker Center, we have a threefold mission: to conduct research on the impact of sport and physical activity in the lives of girls, their families, and communities. Secondly, we engage in community outreach and public service. And third, we provide first-rate educational opportunities for both graduate and undergraduate students. To that end, I would like to acknowledge Mike and Van Mueller's contribution and scholarship in honor of their daughter, Edith Mueller. Their support makes this lecture series possible, and their gift supports student scholarship. Edith Mueller was a student in the Recreation, Park, and Leisure Studies program here at the University of Minnesota until her untimely death in 1982. A scholarship was created in her memory by her family, including her sister, Carrie Fritzie, to help support other students pursuing their degree and career. Every year, we honor the Mueller family at this event and announce the winners of the Edith Mueller Memorial Scholarship. For this academic year, our student winners are Mason Cho and Stephanie Maria Schmidt, students in our sport management program. Congratulations, students, and thank you again to the Muellers for their long-standing support. Given that the Tucker Center is housed within the School of Kinesiology in the College of Education and Human Development at the University of Minnesota, I'd also like to acknowledge and thank the director of the School of Kinesiology, Dr. Beth Lewis, and the Dean of the College of Education and Human Development, Dr. Michael Rodriguez, for their ongoing support of the Tucker Center. Thank you to so many of you watching this webinar who also support our work and use what we produce for social good. A special thanks to the Tucker team behind the scenes: Jonathan Sweet, Courtney Boucher, Sophie Glassford, Hannah Silva Breen, and Efrat Abadi. We could not do what we do in the Tucker Center without our team, and that includes our administrative and graduate students. Before I frame up the panel and introduce our panelists and moderator, just a few housekeeping items. Given that this is a virtual event, we are relying on technology. So I would like for all of us to agree up front to give each other some grace in navigating this webinar. The order of events tonight, the batting order, if you will begin with remarks from each panelist, followed by discussant remarks and a moderated Q&A with panelists. To close, we will engage with you, the audience, in Q&A. So please submit your questions as they arise throughout using the Q&A function on Zoom located at the bottom of your screen. We will try to answer as many questions as we can at the end. Your chat function is disabled, but please engage and post your comments and reactions using Twitter and tagging us using @TuckerCenter. Now, on to the distinguished lecture, our main event. Previously, I outlined the Tucker Center's threefold mission of education, research, and outreach. This distinguished lecture series brings together all parts of our mission by creating a forum that allows the best and the brightest to share their insights, knowledge, and expertise on cutting edge and relevant aspects of women's involvement in sport and physical activity. Over the last 27 years, as a thought leader for girls and women in sport, we have inspired and moved the scholarly discussion, advocacy, and research forward by inviting leaders and experts to speak on a range of multidisciplinary topics such as aging and bone health, disability, women in sport leadership, developing physically active girls, reducing obesity in Black women, the impact of traditional and digital media representations on sportswomen, eating disorders, concussions, and ACL injuries in female athletes, homophobia, Title IX, and recently transgender athlete inclusion. Most all of these distinguished lectures were recorded and can be found on our distinguished lecture archive on our website at tuckercenter.org. Educators, researchers, and stakeholders in women's sport around the world have used these videos and the many resources we have in a plethora of ways, and we invite you to do the same. This lecture tonight is also being recorded. This fall, the fall of 2020, the Tucker Center is forming a strategic plan under my directorship. I will be excited to share with you how the Tucker Center will continue to bring experts together, provide insight, thought leadership, and evidence-based strategies to help us all work collaboratively around the globe to move the needle and create social change and much needed systems change for girls and women in sport. Much work remains. It's up to women and the allies that support us to bring up, lift up, listen and give voice, illuminate, leverage our untapped strengths, reach back and pull forward, speak truth, employ available power and social capital, and provide space for other women to make it better for all girls and women, regardless of their identities and positionalities, and not just for some. In this current socio-cultural political moment in US history, athletes in record numbers are using their power and cultural capital to impact social change. However, the voices and actions of Black women scholars, and Black female athletes often gets erased, silenced, and marginalized in comparison to their white female and male counterparts as they navigate the game within the game, institutionalized racism, and multiple oppressions at the intersections of racial and gender stereotypes. The purpose of this multidisciplinary panel of experts is to highlight, currently and historically, the power, importance, and voices of resistance of Black women in the fight for social justice in society in general, and sport in particular. Knowledge produced by, for, and about Black women is central to resisting oppression. This lecture is intended to help break silence and lift voices of Black women scholars who will talk about their work and the importance of athlete activism. As Patricia Hill Collins wrote, it is not when the silence will be broken, but what form it may take. This summer, there have been many forms. This lecture is one form, and a form that we hope will inspire future discussion, research, and action. There's great attention and numerous discussions about athlete activism, but our goal with this lecture is to position the scholarly dialogue and research about athlete activism, particularly as it relates to women. It is my great honor and pleasure to invite the panelists and the moderator to the screen so I can introduce them. Each of these remarkable women have remarkable bios, which can be accessed in full on our website, or you can Google them. For the sake of time and to maximize the time hearing from them, which is why you're all here, I'm annotating each bio. Trust me, this group is truly representative of the best and brightest. In preparation, each panelist has provided preference for how she wants to be referred to, so you may hear us flip back and forth in formal titles. Our first panelist is actually our moderator, Dr. Nikki Frank, or Dr. Nikki. She's a retired associate professor at Temple University's Department of Public Health, where she has also coached the fencing team for 46 years. Dr. Frank is a co-founder of the Black Women's Sport Foundation and a two-time Olympian and multiple-time national champion in fencing, and she will serve as our discussant and moderator. Welcome, Dr. Nikki. Dr. Akilah Carter-Francique, or Dr. Akilah, is the executive director for the Institute for the Study of Sport, Society, and Social Change at San Jose State University, where she is also an associate professor in the Department of African American Studies. Dr. Akilah is the past president of the North American Society for Sports Sociology, otherwise known to many as NASS. Dr. Jasmine George Williams, or Dr. G, is an activist, sociocultural higher education practitioner, and an assistant professor in education counseling at the University of La Verne in California, where she is a faculty partner to the Intercollegiate Athletics Committee. You will hear Dr. D share her evidence-based model of activism that centers the experiences and leadership of activists of color. Welcome, Dr. G. Next up is Dr. Joyce Olushola Ogurinde, or Dr. Joyce, or Dr. O. She is an assistant professor of health and human performance and scholar activist at the University of Houston. Through her research, Dr. O seeks to uncover the ways in which people and communities engage in sport and help to increase the utility of sport within their communities in an effort to redress health, social, and economic disparities. Welcome, Dr. Joyce. Our final panelist is Dr. Nefertiti Walker, or Dr. Neff, who is the Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Chief Diversity Officer, as well as an Associate Professor of Sport Management in the Mark H. McCormick Department of Sport Management at the Eisenberg School of Management at UMass Amherst. Dr. Walker's expertise relates to sport organizational culture, and she is a NASM Research Fellow and serves as the co-director for the Laboratory for Inclusion and Diversity in Sport. That is quite a lineup. With this lineup, this will be an event we will not soon forget, so thank you for joining us. To lead off our all-star batting order, we will first hear from Dr. Carter-Francique.
Good afternoon. I had to get my time zones correct with everybody. Before I get into my talk today, I wanted to share a little video with everyone. So just tuck in tight.
Black race is founded on 2/3 a person, rapings and beatings and suffering that worsens. Black human packages tied up in strings. Black rage can come from all these kinds of things. Black rage is founded on blatant denial, squeezed economics, subsistence survival, deafening silence and social control. Black rage is founded on wounds in the soul. When the dogs bite, when the bees sing, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember all these kinds of things, and then I don't feel so bad.
So today I come to you from San Jose State University out in sunny California. We finally have some clear skies, bringing you Rage, Black women's rise in sport and activism. For sake of time, I'm gonna read my presentation to keep on schedule. So over the past few months, the notion of rage has emerged in the US and worldwide to articulate the feelings, emotions, and frustration of Black people, people of color, and those connected and those concerned with navigating the plight of oppression. Rage is defined as violent, uncontrollable anger. Anger is defined as strong feelings of displeasure and usually antagonism. Hence the notion of Black rage, and of anger as bound in racism, is a response to racism, and as Lorde suggests, a response to exclusion, unquestioned privilege, of racial distortions of silence, ill use, stereotyping, defensiveness, misnaming, betrayal, and co-optation. But for me, I define rage, I interpret rage, my understanding of it to be the resistance against generational miseducation. But how do we unpack that? We unpack it by understanding our history, contextualizing of the present, and action for the future. Killing Rage. In 1995, Bell Hooks wrote Killing Rage, Ending Racism. Well, I did not discover this text until almost a decade and a half later. I found it to be a useful guide to understanding my own feelings. Right, it reminded me of my very existence, the daily experiences that were steeped in my racial categorization and entrenched in this matrix of racism. In Killing Rage, Bell Hooks speaks of an intense anger due to the endemic nature of racism in the US towards Black people, to include Black women, the experiential realities of racial categorization, systemic racism, which renders Black women silenced, invisible, or either a criminal, a threat, not worthy of respect, and seen not in our full humanity. To make it more plain, Black women came to this land through the Middle Passage in the bows of ships layered one atop the other, shackled, laying in sweat, urine, and blood, used as labor in servitude, raped and called mistresses, and then used as reproductive vessels to support the economic institution of slavery, becoming long-term members of the American body politic. We as Black women live at the intersections of what Hooks describes as white supremacist capitalistic patriarchy, socially positioned to be at the bottom of the structural, political, and representational hierarchy, viewed as valuable to the perpetuation of generations, but not of value. Living as outsiders within, viewed as bystanders on the margin of society, and others as we watched our brethren being traded, our mates and children being sold for their strength in numbers, or forced to pack our children up on our backs from a place we call home, Tulsa, 1921, my great-grandmother, Rosella Carter. Moving from Killing Rage, Brittney Cooper shares the notion of eloquent rage. This conception suggests that we still have anger. We as Black women have learned to channel our energies, wear the mask, and utilize our skill set with an encoded style and in a fashion that is in many ways palatable, for some still culturally uncomfortable, but toward a purposeful effort, thus clear, expressive, and to the point. We have learned to use our rage and our intellect as a catalyst to develop critical consciousness, a catalyst for inspiring courageous action. However, no matter our efforts, our status of intellect, our doctorates, our years of administrative and coaching experiences, nor 23 Grand Slams will protect us. Venus and Serena Williams know this all too well, and where they are not the first to experience such negative treatments like Theodora Tidy Pickett, Louise Stokes, or the mental duress like Althea Gibson, and racist interactions as Venus and Serena experienced at Indian Wells and the US Open. Together and separate, they have endured, negotiating the cultural terrain of national and international professional tennis. Being non-white, right, male, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, places Black women in the other category, and they do not follow the fortitude to, or allow the fortitude to express their anger, to show emotion of dislike or respond to injustice in any way. Instead, we are left to navigate the mythology of Black womanhood and the subsequent stereotypes that predate our present day existence. The myths resonate from real life Sarah Baartman, the Hottentot Venus, to the four socially constructed stereotypes of the mammy, the Jezebel, the matriarch, the welfare queen. Unfortunately, the creation of these controlling images did not end with those four historical images. New iterations emerged as Stevens and Phillips show here: the diva, the gold digger, the freak, the dyke, the gangster bitch, the sister savior, the mother, and the baby mama. Eventually, their manifestations would influence Black women's adolescent embodiment and the adultification of our Black girls that caused them to be detained unseen, physically slammed in the midst of learning, and pushed out of our schools without voices of rage. Despite surviving the gauntlet of these realities, these young girls developed into athletic champions. And while similar to Venus and Serena, as we are not a monolithic group, Black women in society and in sport at all levels and at all ages fall victim to the mythology of Sarah Baartman, treated as entertainment and spectacle. The strength and confidence filled in the faces of these amazing, phenomenal, talented, and proud Black girls and women did not shield them from the stains and the residue of racism, sexism, classism, and other isms based on their religion, sexual orientation, nationality, and skin tone. The rage and anger would press down. Bell Hooks reminds us that the response to Black rage, or killing rage, and I will add eloquent rage, and that these should be seen also as healthy and a healing response to the oppression and exploitation. Why? Because as Black people, as Black women, and in many ways as athletes, we have been taught to hide our emotions, to shield our hurt, and to wear the mask, because anger and rage will get you killed. It will get you fired. It will get you ostracized. Nevertheless, as Audre Lorde maintains, anger is useful against personal and institutional oppression, and that when forced with precision, it can become a powerful source of energy, serving progress and change. So we have learned that rage can be all-consuming, affecting our health and our mental health to the point of destruction. Therefore, it must be mitigated through intentional channeling and expression of emotion that acknowledges the struggles of Black people and the recognition of a self-determined mindset to become activists. In many ways, activism is healing. The expression of anger is healing. Choosing not to be a victim in the wave of psychological, physical, health, and economic terror takes fortitude, support from those before us, knowledge of our past, and a critical understanding of the ways in which these acts intercede and interface with society. We know our value is instilled in us based on our foremothers of Mary Church Terrell, Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, Rosa Parks. It's instilled by our other mothers, our sisters, our aunts, our grandmothers, Joanne and Darlene, and our mother, Constance Fox Carter, that stand in the gap to support our passage, sharing our history to contextualize our lived experiences, and strategies that enable us to continue our journey and continue the legacy of sisterhood and activism. As I end, I will say that racism, sexism, and classism, heterosexism, and other isms continue to persist in social and cultural institutions, such as sport, within the US and beyond. Rage and anger are a normal human emotional response to oppression. Rage is information, it's energy. And more importantly, rage is information that on an experiential, or is based on experiential access and treatment. Rage, again, is that energy. Rage can be cultivated as a source of empowerment. We must encourage Black women in their humanity to continue to resist against generational miseducation by using their intellect, athletic prowess, positionality, and platforms in tandem with the media to educate and unveil social inequalities, inequities, and injustices in sport and society, each generation, like I do with my daughter and my son, Alexandra and Aiden. Thank you. And I'm gonna pass it over to a woman that gives us life, gives us oxygen, Dr. O2. It's all yours.
Ooh, thank you, Dr. Francique. I need a breath. I need a breath. Thank you. I know for many people, that's the first time you've seen that much information about Black women presented in such a concise and powerful way. So feel your feelings in this moment. It's a lot to take in, but we want you to humanize with us as we talk more about the Black woman experience. And so I want to talk further about how Black women have been able to use our rage constructively through our own story. So the theme I want to give about her story is that she is silent, but not still. So to review, I want to walk through 4 chapters. Chapter 1, she who is grieving. Chapter 2, she who is ignored, critiquing masculinity in Black sport activism. Chapter 3, she who is active, demasculinizing Black sport activism. And chapter 4, she who is hopeful. Carter Francique's work uncovered that Black female student athletes felt unable to discuss issues facing them in their community with their coaches or mentors and felt alienated by the false or inaccurate narratives about their personhood. Armstrong and McDowell's work showed us that even in roles of sport leadership and administration, Black women felt their voices minimized, tokenized, if recognized at all. Silencing Black women has affected the quality and quantity of Black women's sport experience, as well as their overall health, as highlighted earlier by Dr. Francique. Bruning in 2005 described this silencing as the underrepresentation of Black women in the research and practice of sport, when sport reflects the values and interests of the white male majority. In research, Black women lived experience are subsumed under paradigms in which all the women are white and all the Blacks are males. These paradigms are built on data exclusive of the Black woman's experience and reify their position on the margins of their gender and their race, as evidenced by their experiences as athletes and administrators. Moreover, undergirding this focus on white males is a desire to protect one's masculinity, particularly as the Black male became more of a physical and psychological threat. The focus on white masculinity in sport not only marginalizes Black women in sport, but sought to sideline their ability to be activists through sport. So while the silencing of Black women may not be malicious, it sure is intentional. I posit that the framing of sport as a contest between white men and Black men is a mirror of the larger fight white and Black men in the US and in US society have for human rights. The focus on men is undergirded by prevailing masculinity defined by power, control, and authority. Protecting one's masculinity is rooted in self/ego preservation and the ability to determine one's freedom in defiance of another man's power or will. In sport activism, the masculinization of Black athlete activism is characterized by a focus on individual action, focus on displays of power, particularly those of self-governance or mastery over others, and a focus on static action versus systematic change. Framing sport as an apolitical space has allowed masculinity and its effect on sport activism to go unchecked. Sport is not only a space where patterns and power dynamics between men and women, white people and people of color, in the larger society are reified, but more importantly, sport is a space where these patterns and power dynamics can be challenged and redefined for the holistic development of the communities to which we belong. Yet, to do so, we need to demasculinize Black athlete activism. How do we do that? Through theory, trust, and training. We need theories that acknowledge the complexity of activism as an array of collective and individual action. We need to trust Black women who have been doing the work and center their lived experience as people worthy of study and agents of change. And training. We need to educate and empower athletes and administrators to advocate with and for Black women. Cooper, Macaulay, and Rodriguez help us to flesh out athlete activism in a way that is more robust and authentic to the ways that we have seen athletes, Black athletes of all genders, engage in sport activism. What is powerful about their typology is that it reconstructs power as one's ability to speak for oneself and one's community in concert with the community and in cooperation with those in allied communities. Specifically, the typology posits that activism can and possibly must be done in, through, and around sport, therefore requiring more than individual action or power to be effective. Illustrative examples of the effectiveness of activism under this typology are and continue to be the work of Black female athletes. So when we talk about trust, we need to trust that Black women have and continue to do the work. In 2008, Spivak asks, "Can the subaltern speak?" referring to how Black women have been silenced, but yet not still. The focus on masculine forms of activism silence Black women and marginalize their activist work. Consider the Black man's fight for self-respect and survival. The role of Black women in community activism is underrepresented in the literature, leading to the erasure of these women and their contributions to civil rights movements. Despite the atrocities women face alongside Black men, these women are still subject to misogynist critiques of their physical and emotional strength. Black female athletes were not immune to these critiques. Their physical prowess placed them on the world's highest pedestals, but their achievements still fell short of winning the respect of their male counterparts and the space to protest alongside them. Yet, how do we juxtapose the silencing of Black femininity with the success of Black female athletes? On the backdrop of Naomi Osaka's powerful performance with her athleticism and her activism, the lived experience of Black female athletes illuminate the silenced are not silent. Moreover, it is the silencing that pushes these girls and women to find ways to be heard that are unique to their standpoint in their society and impactful to the development of their community. So when we talk about masculinizing activism, what has it done to Black women? I mean, can you imagine what it feels like for someone to negate your personhood, your feelings, your desires, your capacity? For people to live in your presence as if you do not exist and only call on you, mother, wife, partner, sister, advisor, teacher, special assistant coach, when you have a purpose in theirs? I think about the Trump tweet when he referred to Colin Kaepernick's mother as a son of a bee. But yet, there's no reference to any Black female athlete activism, including the tireless efforts of the players and administrators of the WNBA. How damaging to us as Black women to only be referenced as a slap in the face to Black men. Our activist work to support Black men ignored, silenced by the media and social policies, and our very own presence employed to destroy them. But being in silence and being told we're less than came with the need to cope with discrimination by focusing on what makes us great. Black women constantly live at the intersection of grief and gratitude, knowing that we and others are considered less than and constrained by social structures and norms, but having an audacity to hope that one day we can be our full selves and help others to do the same. As uncovered by Cooper's typology, Black female athletes have been doing the work. And their experiences demonstrate how they move stealthily in the silence, use silence as a weapon to move freely instead of an excuse to be paralyzed, and confound hegemonic paradigms about their womanhood and their race. So with these women, the Althea Gibsons, the Tidy Picketts, the Madeline Nims, the Nikki Franks, being examples of what Black activism has been and is, I yield to Dr. Jasmine George Williams to tell us what activism can be.
Thank you so much, Dr. O. I greatly appreciate it. Okay. So as we continue to speak about and dialogue about the climate that's leading in society that's leading to increased activism, I would be speaking with my fellow colleagues and working with student activists and student athletes, Black college athlete activists and community activists. I would ask them, what are some of the reasons why they've decided to engage in activism, especially now? And so this list that you see here is just a small caveat of the injustices that have and continues to take place in society. And as we look down the bottom, right now, we are experiencing multiple pandemics: COVID-19, police brutality, racism, amongst so many others. And because of this, I feel that there's been a crash of consciousness, COVID-19 and quarantine, that has brought upon a flood of reality, emotions, guilt, rage, and so forth, that is really compelling people to move, act, speak, and lean in. And so sometimes the only problem with this is that we may not know exactly how or when or where with whom to engage and develop your activist identity. And sometimes with all of this fire inside of you, this can lead to a feeling of despair. You can feel directionless, so much passion, and not quite sure which path to fuel your fire. It's been a very eventful 7 or 8 years for me. As you can see, I've been there. A lot of fire, and as my colleagues have been speaking about, rage. So much fire and so much passion, not exactly knowing where to fuel it. And so that was my motivation for building the AGM, the Activism Growth Model. I wanted to build something for the people, a guide, a lighthouse, a framework for those who are looking to grow, develop, and sharpen their activist lens and identity, especially in a time like this. So after my dissertation, I went back to the drawing board and birthed from multiple studies after my dissertation, and really honoring and centering their narratives, many of whom were Black female athlete activists or Black female student activists, centering their realities on their journey towards growing in their activism and advocacy. The AGM, the Activism Growth Model, was born. And so with the time that I have, good people, I want to unpack the tenets. I've got some works coming up that I'll be able to really truly unpack more, but I just want to give you a little snack of the AGM. And I want to talk about the first tenet. This is the foundation. Begin your soul work. This is by far the most important tenet, I believe, because this is where you are truly continuing to lean in and check in with yourself and asking yourself, what is your definition of activism and advocacy? Why are you called to serve as an activist and advocate? And why now? What, if any, personal injustices have taken place in your life or within communities that you identify with that's showing up in your calling towards activism and social justice? And what are some active ways that you are healing or working to heal from such injustices so that you can truly lean into your calling? Because we all have a seat at the table. We all have a voice. Now it's about beginning your soul work to see where you are called. That's soul work. The second is know your role or roles. And so I chose three kind of overarching, where I think that just from hearing the narratives of the wonderful students and community activists and Black athlete activists, where they found their calling. And so I chose three. And so the first one is the agitator. So they light the match. They create awareness by putting issues, society, on agenda through dramatic nonviolent actions. They essentially place a mirror in front of society. They put them on blast. They start things going, right? They start the party and bring about awareness. The second role is reformer. So these individuals work with official structures to incorporate solutions, maybe into new laws or policies that can be incepted into new wisdoms of society. They essentially have some sort of seat at the table. They have a voice already. They have some sort of leadership role where their voice can impact others. They essentially are working within systems while actively challenging, tweaking, and dismantling those same systems. And the last is a change agent. So this person may not necessarily work directly in education or higher education. I think there's a plethora of diverse individuals on our webinar today. So maybe this is where you may fall. A change agent works to educate, organize, and involve the general public to actively oppose present policies to seek positive, constructive solutions. That's the second tenet, know your role. And, you know, some people have said, you know, Dr. G, I kind of fall into both. I feel that I thrive in all of them, where then you would be a versatile role. And wherever you feel you are thrived, whatever your sphere of influence is, that is where you naturally advocate. The third tenet is choose your vehicle or vehicles. So you're unpacking, you're healing, you're seeing where you're naturally called, but how do I operationalize this? How do I utilize advocacy and activism? And Dr. O was wonderful. She gave a great alley-oop to me talking about Cooper's typology of activism. Well, I gleaned from three of those, scholarly, grassroots, and public display or symbolic. And I won't unpack them too much just for the sake of time, but really scholarly activism is what we're doing here tonight. It's so beautiful. And we're sharing different pieces and pockets, adding to the academic sphere and knowledge sphere. Grassroots, hey, invention is the mother of necessity, right? So you have to invent something. If it hasn't been, done before, that's okay. Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, Colin Kaepernick's Know Your Rights campaign, the wonderful things that the WNBA and the NBA are doing, what they did in the bubble to engage others to vote, and of course, Black Lives Matter. And then lastly, public displays are symbolic activism. And I think this is one of the more well-known or understood types of activism. It's public displays. So it's marching, kneeling, some sort of external form. And so those are the three kind of basic roles in which many of my participants shared how they operationalize their activism. The fourth in the AGM, it's right in the middle. This is what's gonna sustain you. Find your people. I gotta tell you, in my PhD program, growing in my activism was a very lonely place as a Black female scholar activist. I was very misunderstood in many ways, and I think my colleagues can attest to that, right, in the different spaces. But finding your people, Audre Lorde says, without community, there is no liberation, and I wholeheartedly believe that. And so these are peers, mentors, people in different academic communities. This is a space and a place where you can feel safe to grow, be vulnerable, and to nourish your identity. And so once you're growing, you're healing, you're figuring out where I'm called, you're gonna locate the barriers, you're gonna locate the haters. We know. I mean, look at how much they're trying to suppress our vote, right? We have a voice, and so there will be barriers. And so this can be a plethora of barriers. And speaking from either my experience or those students and community activists I've worked with, these barriers can be internal, family, community. What are the historical barriers that have plagued this particular community or communities, groups, populations? And as many of us that are in higher education, what is the institutional barriers? What is the campus climate like when it comes to a particular population, cause, or topic? And ultimately, where can you see yourself making a difference in breaking and challenging these barriers? The sixth is practice radical compassion. Now, I know I said soul work was important, and I know I said finding people was important, but you know what? Practicing radical compassion is by far so crucial. I call it radical self-compassion and care because taking care of yourself is crucial to being able to resist oppression and injustice. Good people, we are in the process of creating a world where we recognize every individual's right to love, care, respect, be free and liberated. And that can take a toll on your mind, body, and soul. And so activist burnout is real. Racial battle fatigue is real. Race-based trauma is real. And caregiver stress, the actual act of caring too much. Isn't that heartbreaking? All those are real because I have experienced those. And so this is not my line, but Anne Lamott says, almost everything will work well again if you unplug it for a few minutes, including you. And so in order to be rejuvenated and authentic in this work, you must care for your mind, body, and soul. And so lastly, as you continue to grow and develop in your advocacy and activism, build upon your resources, find your people, boldly disregard the barriers, but radically loving on yourself, you have engaged in the practice of being a holistic advocate and activist. And the cycle continues. And so I want to thank you for your time, the quick snack that I was able to unpack from the AGM. I hope that this introduction for the AGM has continued to ignite your passion and calling to this fight towards social justice. We need you. And so now I'd like to pass the mic to Dr. Walker.
Thank you, Dr. G. Thank you for the activism growth model. I will absolutely be talking about that a little in the presentation that I give. All right, so good evening, good people. As my title implies, I will discuss the WNBA through the framing of intersectionality, building off the knowledge that my esteemed colleagues have shared. I want to discuss the role of the WNBA as a predominantly Black league leading a social justice movement. So what is intersectionality? Intersectionality is a prism for understanding the convergence of multiple marginalized identities. In my work, I am most concerned with these marginalized identities converging and forming barriers to inclusion for certain people. For instance, Black, woman, and lesbian has led to the outcomes of high turnover and tensions for those folks working in sport. The thesis of intersectionality is not what some political pundits would want you to believe. They would want you to believe that the politicizing and recent uptick of interest in intersectionality is to compete in some sort of oppression Olympics. But this is absolutely not the case. The thesis of intersectionality is that multiple marginalized identities meet at a crossroads. And at that crossroads, identities and people with these intersecting identities might experience life quite differently from their peers. So for instance, yes, there's a lack of Black coaches and executives in the WNBA and in the NBA. Yes, there is a lack of women coaches in the WNBA and the NBA. However, there are zero, not a single Black woman head coach in the WNBA, and there are no Black women sitting on the benches in the NBA. So what this says to me, and what it should say to a lot of people, is that this suggests that Black women are experiencing discrimination, they're experiencing barriers in a way that is quite different from their white women and Black male peers. So until we understand the experiences of these women, we are woefully underqualified to fix this issue. So looking at the WNBA through intersectionality helps us understand that the collision of heterosexism, racism, and sexism has shaped their ability to take on social justice identity. Typically, when we examine intersectionality at the intersection of power, there results a deficit of some sort. People who experience the world through these multiple marginalized identities often experience decreased access to resources, for instance, less opportunities, and strained engagement or a strained relationship with their organization. However, what we're seeing with the WNBA is that because of their experiences of fighting against double and sometimes triple systems of oppression, they are most prepared for this moment. The WNBA is a Black league. 70% of the players identify as Black or African American. Sheryl Swoopes, a Black woman, being the first player to sign with the WNBA, And the culture of the WNBA, for instance, is this sneakerhead type culture. I guess you can see it a little bit with me wearing the hoodie today, trying to be on brand, but WNBA has this sneakerhead type culture, and that is absolutely rooted in Blackness. Being Black means having an intimate relationship with oppression and most likely a deep understanding of the importance of social justice and social advocacy. And in some ways, if we think about this intersectionality and the intersection of multiple marginalized identities, the WNBA has recently had an awakening with accepting their LGBTQ identity and giving space and voice to those experiences, which is different from their relationship with that particular identity of the past. Intersectionality provides the framework, the answers of why the WNBA as an organization was most prepared to take on the summer of 2020 and the enormous weight of the moment. It is because that they've had a reckoning. They've had this reckoning with who they are as being a Black, white, international, gay, queer, lesbian, non-binary, and more. They've had their reckoning with these identities over time in ways that a lot of other sport organizations in America at least has not. This summer of 2020, in the midst of protests, the WNBA and its players prioritized Black voices. They began producing anti-racism content for their employees, namely the players. They created a social justice council, and internally they interrogated their practices, their policies, in an effort to push the league toward anti-racism. This combination of inclusive practices and processes, as well as the interrogation that they did internally to look within themselves and see what they can do better, as well as actually having real diversity, actually having Black women in leadership positions on their teams, for instance, actually having LGBTQ queer folks in their organization. All of this diversity in their workforce is a recipe for supporting Black women, but also a recipe for an organization that's ready to support Black women. So at this point, sport needs to follow the WNBA's lead. This league, led by Black women, have been doing the social justice work since the birth of the league. In 2016, Minnesota Lynx players, before Kaepernick took a knee, protested the killings of Philando Castile as well as Alton Sterling. This work was done before Kaepernick took a knee. This work was in some ways silenced. It wasn't made as big of a deal as other types of protests that we've seen across various leagues. The 2020 Wubble season was spent protesting the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Jacob Blake, for instance. So the WNBA as a league has been doing this work. And I think that's really important to point out. They've been doing this work and they've been leading so other sport organizations that are looking internally and trying to figure out what can they do to support Black women, they really just need to turn to the WNBA and follow their lead. The WNBA is the most socially progressive, conscious league, professional league in America, no doubt. And it's also the most diverse and inclusive league in America, professional sports. So approaching sports, what's the urgency? The urgency of both listening to Black women, the urgency of the moment that we're in right now, this what some people are calling a racial awakening, a racial reckoning, which it might be that way for some. For many people, this awakening and reckoning has been happening their entire lives. But again, the urgency of this moment is to acknowledge the power of intersectionality as an analysis, as a framework for trying to understand the experiences of Black women. Approaching sports and issues related to Black women through intersectionality increases the range and scope of inclusion. The idea is to be descriptive in ways that a singular approach, for instance, does not allow. Eventually and over time, we hope to provide more prescriptive organizational approaches to inclusion of Black women by using this particular approach. In conclusion, be like the WNBA. It's kind of that simple. Listen to Black women as the WNBA has listened to Black women, as the WNBA has lifted the voices of Black women, as they were interrogating their processes and practices and trying to become more anti-racist as an organization, they listen to the voices of Black women. Tell the stories of Black women. It's very important to also tell these stories of Black women. They've done the same. If you've watched any games this summer, before the games, they were telling the stories of the women who were killed through police violence, such as Breonna Taylor. They were telling the stories of the Black women in their organization who are, giving up a lot of their energy, their time, their efforts, such as Natasha Cloud, for instance, who gave up her whole season to fight this battle against social injustice. And then create space for Black women. And all of sports will be better for it. So thank you. At this point, I will pass the mic to Dr. Nikki Frank, co-founder of Black Women's Sport Foundation.
Thank you very much. And it's been fascinating to listen to you ladies. I am so proud of all that you have accomplished and are doing to ensure that Black women's voices are being heard. To hear Dr. Akilah talk about how Black women have endured and suppressed their rage and anger for so long, and Dr. Joyce talking about how Black women athletes especially often have had to fight injustices in silence. To think about the intersectionality that Dr. Neff talks about of multiple marginalized identities, as well as Dr. Jasmine's activism growth model, are all things that we really can learn about and learn from as we continue this fight for justice that is going on. The Black Women in Sport Foundation was formed almost 30 years ago by Tina Sloan Green, Alpha Alexander, Linda Green, and myself, because we were not seeing and hearing from outstanding Black professionals like our panelists this evening, as we went to various conferences back then. Rarely at these conferences where women's issues are focused. And even at conferences that focused on women in sports, seldom if ever were there unique issues and concerns of Black athletes, coaches, or administrators addressed. Our voices weren't being heard or even asked for. So what did we do? Well, we started holding our own conferences at Temple so that the issues important to us and our colleagues could be explored. Civil rights in the era of the 60s and 70s was a very difficult time for Black athletes, especially Black female athletes. The struggle was mostly being led by men, and women were expected to play a supportive role, as some of our panelists have talked about. There were few prominent Black female athletes at that time, and those that existed received very little attention, especially when it came to their strong work ethic, their outstanding athleticism, and their achievements. They went unnoticed and unheralded. Even with regards to different protest events that were organized by the Olympic Project for Human Rights, for instance, there was a boycott in 1968 of the New York Athletic Club track meet by Black athletes to really protest the discrimination and racism at the New York Athletic Club, or the protest at the 1968 Olympics. Women were still not included. They did not have a seat at the table. As a young Black girl from Harlem growing up during these times, I never dreamed of being a fencer, of traveling around the world, going to the Olympics, or even coaching. Growing up, racism and sexism rendered Black women athletes invisible, and segregation kept them out of certain sports. Even in my own sport of fencing, fencing was not integrated until 1949. And so I started fencing during the turmoil of the late 60s. I started in a public high school, not in a private club, which is the norm today. We didn't have the money for private clubs. I started with a female coach my senior year of high school. Most fencers never experience having a female coach. And then I went on to a college where I had another female coach who was an Olympian. Having female coaches definitely influenced my view of what a coach could be or could actually look like. I've been truly blessed to have some wonderful mentors over the years who helped me grow and develop in ways I couldn't even have imagined. Mentors who were women of color, who were men, who were white friends and allies. Tina Sloan Green was one of my strongest mentors. She led me and gave me so much good advice over the years. She had a vision and was instrumental in getting Alpha, Linda, and I involved in forming the Black Women in Sport Foundation. She was really the power behind the throne. Carol Oglesby, who was a white faculty member at Temple when we got there, introduced us to the Women's Sports Foundation and encouraged us to go to different conferences and to participate. Denise O'Connor, who was my college coach, and my mother, the ones who convinced me to go to graduate school at Temple and to follow my dreams. And then my coach, my Olympic coach, Lajos Chiza, was a Hungarian man who saw my talent and gave me a scholarship to train at his club. And all of us, none of us would be where we are today without the support of our families. My mom was my biggest advocate, as well as my husband, and I couldn't have achieved anything without them. These mentors gave me the courage to begin a Division I fencing program when I arrived at Temple as a graduate student just out of college with absolutely no coaching experience. Being a female head coach of a women's team truly matters. Representation matters, but it's also a very lonely space with little support. Less than 15% of Division I head coaches, fencing coaches, are women. Most fencing coaches are not only male, but they're also foreign. Out of all 3 NCAA divisions, only 2% of head coaches and administrators or athletic directors are Black females. In Division I collegiate fencing, there are only 4 female head coaches, 1 at Stanford, 1 at Harvard, 1 at Cornell. And I am the only Black female head coach in the country in all 3 divisions. And so I believe that being an example, a mentor to others, is one of the best forms of activism that a person can engage in. I now have 12 of my former fencers who are either currently or formerly coached at a college or a club, which is phenomenal when you think about how few women fencing coaches there are, to have 12 of them out there doing this work. So it's so important to advocate for and support female head coaches so that our young female athletes of color can look at us and see a mirror image of what they can be and not feel they're looking through a window that doesn't reflect who they are. It's hard to be what you can't see. The current social justice movement and protests are nothing new to me. Crying out to have your voice heard has been a constant battle for African Americans and especially Black women throughout history. I attended a college that had 50 Black and Latino students out of 30,000 students. I can remember protesting. I can remember making demands of the administration, sit-ins on campus in the late 60s. I remember how we were often treated and dismissed by faculty and administration, underestimated. But I also remember how it felt seeing some of my teammates in the crowd reacting to our protest and screaming, "Get them off the campus." That's an image that I will never forget, because you had to be silent and you had to go back into that world and exist. Because of my past experiences, when the current protest for social justice began, as a coach, I felt it was my duty to help my athletes process what was going on and support their reactions and actions with regard to the Black Lives Matter movement and their heightened awareness of social injustice. They worked together, they discussed issues, and eventually developed a team statement after George Floyd's murder. Several are actively involved with our Temple student athlete organization called Owls for Justice, with ongoing programs and activities. They become proactive when it comes to voting and have devised their own individual plan for voting and having their voice heard. Many of them have never voted before. I believe it's impossible to truly talk about social justice and activism and not listen to the voices and experiences of Black women. And so I'm going to ask our panelists to come back on because I have a question for them. having said that and having talked about how I got to the place I am, I'm curious if each of you would like to talk, to speak about what motivates you, what inspires you to do the work that you're doing, and how have some of your mentors influenced you in your work? Anyone can take that.
I'll be happy to start. I think I mentioned, my motivation through my presentation. A lot of it is my family, my foremothers, my great grandmother who, fled Tulsa, Oklahoma, and learning her story of grace, but also fortitude. My grandmothers, knowing what they've lived through and experienced. My mom, who was just my rock in so many ways, continuing to give me knowledge and wisdom and strategies to navigate, again, because she has been the first in so many places in her life. And, with me being the first in so many places still, at my age, it's hard to kind of wrap my head around, but there is that need to, well, how do I do this? And how do I get through this? So that shared knowledge, that warmth, and hope from her. And then my daughter, once I had her, it just kind of solidified sort of my purpose in many ways. And she continues to challenge me. I love her to death. But she also keeps me encouraged because I'm trying to create a world that she can walk into and be her full self. Not only she be her full self, but her little brother be his full self, and support and understand the lived experiences of Black women to the point that he is supportive, that he is uplifting, and that he is also holding her up.
That's so important because so often we forget about having that support and support. And so, we have to teach our young men just like we have to teach our young women.
Yeah. And then just real quick, as far as mentors, I've had a range across the color spectrum, but they continue to push me, to challenge me, and also support me. And so that's great when you can find it. It's hard when you're looking for it in certain places and it doesn't come back, but they're there. And so I give, again, Dr. Billy Hawkins was my mentor for my doctorate, and he has one that's been continuing to push me, to challenge me. Yes, Joyce, at University of Houston, go Cougs, my alma mater, but continues to not only push me, but many other individuals as well. So having that individual speak into you and see the greatness in you means a lot. Yeah.
I guess I can piggyback off of Dr. Akilah. I think about my parents, particularly my mom and my dad. My dad was a former member of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, and he passed away when I was really young. But I remember seeing different types of paraphernalia around the house and records or books that I really didn't understand too much. And my mom and my aunt would share a little more about who he was. And so the older I get, they say, oh, you're definitely your daddy's daughter, right? You can't see now, but here's a picture of him and a few of his frat bros and a few of his members of Black Panther Party. My mother was an activist in her own right. She was a school teacher in the Los Angeles Unified School District. And her form of activism was through love, right, and liberation, and even dance. And she served students for about 37 years. And so she's passed away in 2018. Her birthday was actually yesterday. So I feel her today. And so, as I was continuing to build upon my dissertation and rediscovering myself, I just felt them. Mentors, I think that participating and playing sports changed my life. Being a former basketball player and coach, not realizing how important it is to have someone that looks like you, mentoring and coaching you. And then when I became a coach, man, the students and the players, they pick up everything. and I had to say, okay, well, let me make sure, I don't want them to see me at the grocery store not conducting myself in a manner in which I want to make sure that so it was those little things where just wanting to pay it forward and really appreciating the importance of having Black coaches. And I've got, mentors from all walks of life, but Black professors, Black mentors, females. When I think about my life so far, there were pieces in my life where they spoken to me, and that is what I want to do, is continue to speak into others. So yeah.
Fantastic. Definitely. Sport changed. I think everyone here can say that sport changed the trajectory of their lives, and changed many things that you ended up doing that you never imagined. Dr. Joyce.
I am a living testament to what Dr. Nikki stated about being able to see people where you want to be. And I am a proud former intern of the Black Women in Sport Foundation that transformed my life. I wanted to work in the NBA. I worked with 2 different teams before I came to the Black Women in Sport Foundation. And then my mentor, Dr. Nikki Frank, sat me down one day and she said, well, I was doing community programs, and I felt that that's where I was being called to use sport to better our communities. And she said, if this is what you want to do, you got to go get a PhD. And I had never seen a Black female doctor before, let alone one in sport or in kinesiology. And here she was telling me that that's what I could do and giving me the encouragement to do so. So I just want to say thank you, Dr. Nikki Frank, who passed the baton on to Dr. Akilah Carter-Francik. So I am the proud product of mentoring, and just to emphasize that more as one of the needs, not just for Black female athletes, but all of our young people. Just as our previous panelist said, I'm here because I have 2 wonderful parents, Stephen and Grace, whose form of activism was keeping me in line. And making sure I knew I was a person of worth, and that everyone else also is too. So treat them as such. I talk, as Dr. Frank said, the Black Women in Sport Foundation, Tina Sloan Green. When I was at UT, Coach Bev Kearney, high school coaches that were a part of my work. I want to shout out Coach Phyllis, who's at Westinghouse High School in Pittsburgh. So the women who are doing the work, in some way, as Dr. Francik mentioned earlier, all these other mothers have been mentors to me. And again, to shout out all the mentors across the spectrum. When I think about Dr. Dixon, Dr. Green, my allies of all colors, all genders, all races are part of who I am and why I do this work today.
Thank you so much. Dr. Neff.
Yeah, so I'll spend just a short moment sharing a little bit about how I guess how I've been shaped and how my research is shaped by who I am. And I will say certainly my parents being New Yorkers, my dad being born and raised in Harlem. There's no way you could have a parent born and raised in Harlem and not have a proud sense of identity around your Blackness. So I grew up, in Atlanta, which some may call the Black Mecca of the country. So again, I just grew up around and within very strong, proud Black neighborhoods. So that shaped who I am as an individual. And then it shaped my interest in the concerns of Black women more broadly, but also I think playing basketball, the majority of my young adult child life, and seeing the intersection of identities in basketball, right? Like seeing the women and seeing the Black women and seeing the relationships between the Black women and the white women and the tensions even in basketball, seeing the presence of LGBTQ folks, me, myself being a Black woman that's married to a woman, right? Like all of these, I've experienced my whole life, all of these intersecting identities. And therefore it plays out in my research and it plays out in sort of the prism through which I see the world. So my research and my interest and even the work that I do as an administrator is really all situated around my lived experiences and me wanting to create space that wasn't created for me as an individual.
Thank you so much. I think that it's really, our lived experiences and the people that have been in our lives are really who help make us who we are and help us get to where we are. And we always have to remember to look back and to thank them, whether they're with us or not. My grandmother was one of the most fabulous people I ever knew. And she was a West Indian woman. She came here, had a 4th grade education, but during the Depression made sure that all of her kids had a high school education. And then my mom made sure that we all had college educations. And then after we graduated, she went back to school and got a bachelor's and a master's degree. And so it's just, we have so many people who have lifted us. and we have to lift others. And that's what's really, really important. Dr. Akilah, can you talk a little bit about what you think are some of the specific barriers that Black female athletes may encounter on their athletic as well as their activist journey?
A lot.
Short,
You know,
short.
I
Yeah, 2 minutes.
yeah. Well, I'll just real quick say, you know, I was a student athlete at the University of Houston in track and field. And in that time, in that space, you know, you're privy to seeing a lot that's going on. And so in one level, you maybe not expect yourself to move to an activist space, but because you're living injustice and seeing injustice, you're often perhaps catapulted in many ways to speak up and speak out. And so with that, I will say, you know, even if we bring it to today, some of those barriers could be, you know, coaches, administration, teammates and classmates that aren't supportive of efforts due to simple dislike and disagreeableness, or misunderstanding, you know, why you're standing up and why you're speaking out. I think sometimes we get into a space too where coaches and administration can perhaps co-opt your activist efforts and then say, this is what we want, well, let's do it this way. And that was not your intention. And all that, I think, brings to head some of the frustration and perhaps even mental challenges. So as young women are probably going through this, and I know for me, as I began to learn more about myself, unpack the history that I shared today, I got very angry, you know, angry because we really went through all this, but also anger in that I didn't know in many ways that was why I was experiencing some of the things. And so as I came into consciousness, you know, it awakened a rage in many ways, but, and so, you know, there's a need to, with all these barriers and navigating these barriers and moving towards a space of activism, to again, have that support, have that mentor, have that group that supports you. And I did at Houston with my big sisters, if you will, in track that, you know, kept me, you know, and kept me encouraged. And, you know, to this day, we stay in touch. And so that can be very helpful. So, you know, those are some of the barriers, but I think there's many ways to help work with that. And you've got to find community in those spaces.
Thank you. And we have to turn around and mentor others, just like we were mentored, to help them move forward. I have a question for everyone, really. Anybody can jump in. But what are some of the real life consequences of the multiple oppressions Black women face from a public health perspective, both for speaking out as well as for remaining silent? What are some of the health issues that can evolve from that? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Oof, I'll just briefly, when I spoke about the self-care and self-compassion, I lived that over the past 5 years as different either personal injustices were happening. In my life, I was caring for my mother, and she had Alzheimer's and dementia. So that personal injustice of, you know, we're on a time clock, right? I was very aware of time, the lack thereof with my mother. So that rage of knowing she won't be here, but then also the unpacking of, just like Dr. Akilah said, I'm reading things that I was not privy to, K through 12, and sometimes even undergrad. So there's that rage. Then juxtaposed with everything that's happening in society. And so my body, I used to say, oh, my body betrayed me. No, I betrayed my body because I didn't listen, and I did not take care of myself. And so I was in a great deal of pain. I would say, oh, I'm an athlete, I can handle it. But no one should endure the chronic pain physically that I endured, where I developed fibromyalgia. And so that was the onset of stress. And I'm feeling good now, I'm feeling great. And even from a public health, I'm 36 weeks pregnant. And I've been reading the research about the differences, right? I'm holding on, yeah, I'm stretching during the break, but just the differences and the possibilities of the mistreatment that Black women get in the birthing process, in prenatal process. And so that's on my mind, where, you know, my husband and I are going to advocate for ourselves, but what's the consequence for that, of speaking up? Will I get the best care while we are delivering? And those are things that I think about, but still not staying silent, but wanting to speak up. So that leading up to this day, physically, it has been, I've been very conscious as my consciousness has been erased, as Dr. Keela said, but what does that look like now in this physical space? So these are things that have been resonating with me, you know, for the past couple of years into today.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, if I can add, my work looks at the ways that Black girls engage in sport. And so we know all the statistics that say that Black females have high obesity rates, asthma, chronic heart, and chronic diseases, period. And yet we advocate for sport being this tool to redress these health disparities, but we have to ask ourselves, why would anyone want to do an activity where they're being told that they're less than, that they're being silenced, they're being marginalized? So the narrative is that girls don't want to play sport. Nobody wants to do anything that is harmful to them. So we have to redefine these sport spaces if we're going to use them as health intervention tools to be empowering to these young girls, or we're going to continue to see them pushed out of these physical activity spaces, these spaces for mentoring, these spaces for educating and advocating and self-expression and self-exploration, if we don't change the narratives behind who and why people play sports. So that's the public health issue that we're addressing, because we're continuing to use sport in ways that's actually demonstrative and denigrating to Black girls, as opposed to uplifting and empowering them to be healthy holistically.
Dr. Knight?
Yeah, I can comment really quickly. So I cannot comment to the degree of Dr. G or Dr. Joyce, because this is just way outside of my lane. But I think as a personal experience, I can comment on the incredible distraction of racism and sexism and combining those two things, right? Like every day going into work and thinking about things like your hair and, you know, your makeup, for instance, and what you're wearing, and all the extra energy that you have to put towards these things, when often your colleagues are jumping up and, you know, doing something very quick because they know whatever they do to their body and their hair and what clothes they wear will be accepted because they are the standard and the norm. So yeah, so I think, you know, in general, for me, again, I am not well-versed enough to speak of the health benefits beyond my personal experiences, but I would say it's incredibly distracting, and certainly it has a significant impact on my wellness in general. And, you know, I think back to this summer when we were seemingly having, you know, anti-Black violence event after murder, and it's just like, you go into work and you have colleagues who, because it doesn't sit as close to them, you know, they're right on to the next thing. And you're sitting with the stress and the emotional pain of what just happened the day before in the protest. And that, again, is extremely, distracting to your life. We shouldn't have to deal with seeing Black people murdered on television day in and day out. But also, it's this equity issue where you're having to carry this weight in ways that others aren't. And when I say others, the other people that you work with, mostly being the white folks that you work with. So I think, you know, I hope that we can call those things out more, because the area that I feel like I'm more expert in is what's happening in the workplace. And in the workplace, this distraction, this deterrence from your wellness, it actually prohibits you from doing your work. It prohibits you from being productive, efficient, and being as productive and efficient as your peers and your colleagues. So again, that's just my 2 cents as someone that does not do research in that area, but certainly feels the weight of how racism and sexism impacts our lives.
Absolutely, and that's very, very well said. The stress of the constant, you know, it's like it just never lets up. And that takes a toll on you physically, emotionally, mentally. How do you go into work and do your job and be the same old jolly person when inside you're screaming and no one recognizes that, no one says, hey, are you okay? And so that is a burden that, you know, that we continue to carry. So those were great responses, and I think, I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything, but I think Nicole's going to come back on. Dr. Nicole is going to come back on now.
Go ahead, Akilah.
I was just going to piggyback everything and say, you know, at the end of the day, it becomes great anxiety and depression. And that's something that I've lived through. And it's not a fun space to be in. So to Neff's point, you know, many don't understand or recognize that you're going through that on a daily basis. And it can be destructive and in many ways to our ability to continue to do this work. Right. And so, you know, it's one of those things where we, and I'm very appreciative of, I've got a group of sister docs that we check on each other every week just to see how are you doing? Because we know if you're okay, then what you're doing at the job and in work is doing well as well, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's been fabulous. Thank you so much. I am so impressed by each and every one of you young ladies and what you are doing, and just keep it up, keep trudging along and keep going forward and pull folks with you.
Well said, Dr. Nikki. I'm actually quite speechless and overwhelmed with this panel. I have a few targeted questions for each of you that have come in from the Q&A. And so let's just start with Dr. G. It's kind of segues off our last question. Is someone asked, what can Black women actually do to recharge, like actively, in the face of all that you have just described that you deal with on a daily basis?
How much time do we have? You know, something that I made a note to mention, so I'm appreciative for the individual bringing it up. It's find your joy. Find your joy. And so good old Instagram and Facebook, there's an organization called the NAP Ministry, right? And so rest is resistance. And so we don't have to be on all the time. Black women, we don't have to be on all the time. And one of my girlfriends told me that years ago, because I can be high energy and that gets exhausting, right? And she said, Jazz, we don't have to be on all the time. And I didn't understand that, but that gives us permission to rest. And this, as I shared, you know, that my resistance and my form of activism was birthing a beautiful Black baby boy soon. So I couldn't be out in the streets with my people marching and, you know, protesting. And so that was one of the reasons why I really, really wanted to roll out the AGM, but it forced me to rest and be. Because there was something bigger that was happening within me. And we don't have to be at every single meeting. Zoom fatigue is real. I know there were many times during this past summer and spring where I think it was Dr. Walker that said, Black women, Black people, something else has happened to one of our brothers or sisters that unfortunately we've been privy to see because of social media. And then we've got a faculty meeting or a staff meeting the next day. And we are expected to come on and good morning, good afternoon, when our souls are tired and depleted. And so find your joy. Find your joy. We are all in some sort of quarantine space. And so I've been watching a lot of old 90s shows. Find things where you just smile and find your joy. So whatever that is, plug in and make sure you incorporate that. So we don't have to be on, and whatever your joy is, the little random things that make you smile, that is what's going to sustain us. And of course, find your village. Find your village of sister girlfriends or just people you feel safe. That will get you through and sustain you. And like I said, you can unplug. So my unplugging is Netflix, watching Girlfriends or, you know, the Parkers or whatever the case is, but that's my joy. So continue to investigate within yourself those little pockets of joy. That was a really good question. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Dr. G. You also answered, there was a few other questions about, you know, how do young Black women in the academy find their space and their people when they want to do the work. And I think you have all sort of addressed that in different ways. And to those young women that are listening to this webinar right now and who will in the future, you're looking at a screen full of people and women that are more than happy to be part of your circle. So don't ever be afraid to reach out and ask anybody for mentorship, advice, time. I'm guessing everybody on this panel would be more than happy to share.
I'm here because of Dr. Akila. I met her at the Black Student Athlete Summit. She said, hey girl, I like your research. Here's my card. Once I defended my dissertation, I sent it to her and she said, oh my goodness, I love it. And she introduced me to you, Dr. Nicole. And so here we are. So absolutely take our emails. We mean it. We are here because we mean it. So absolutely. And I wanted to give Dr. Akila a shout out before for the days.
Thank you.
You're actually embodying how this works. You too.
And I just dropped my email in the chat.
Email
reach
in
out.
the chat. And we'll make
Yep.
everybody's emails and your resources and your AGM model and your dissertations and all the publications that you have available along with the recording of this video. So Dr. Joyce, I have a question for you. Do you have any fears that post-pandemic, that the voices of Black women activists, female athlete activists, Black scholars will go back into the shadows post-pandemic? And how do we ensure that we don't do that, that doesn't happen?
For me, I think framing what Black women experience as a human issue is important. Going back as a researcher, including Black women in the data, including Black women in the way we theorize how we engage in sport and social institutions in our society are important, because once we're in the data, we're in the literature, you have to cite us, you have to reference us. And so even if we're not on the forefront of the protests and on the pedestals doing the Black fist, we're still going to be in your words, in your actions. And so I think what's important post-pandemic in making sure that we don't continue to silence Black women is to start engaging with the Black women that are around us right now, right? When we think about what lasts, what's sustainable, it's the relationships that mean something to us. So making Black people meaningful, Black women meaningful to you in a personal way is what's going to help us post-pandemic to keep this conversation going.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to jump in on that one before I move on?
I just think we all have to hold each other accountable and make sure we don't drop the ball. I mean, we can't burn out, as Dr. Jasmine said, you're no good to anybody if you burn out, but we have to just keep our eye on the prize and just keep our work and involve other people and just making sure that we're holding everyone accountable to do the work that needs to be done.
Thank
And if
you. Go ahead.
Sorry. Oh, yeah, if I could add one thing, I would say to piggyback off of what Dr. Frank said, hold these organizations accountable. They all made very strong statements of how they're going to invest resources. They're going to have all these commitments to fight anti-racism, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We all read them. They put them on Twitter. They threw them all over social media. Hold them accountable. That's data for us to hold on to and to continue to come back to and say, summer 2020, you said this. Have you actually lived up to this? And I think, I was happy when I saw these organizations coming out with all of these statements. It seemed quite performative, but for me personally, I knew it was something that we can hold on to. And in some ways, quite literally throw it back in their face and say, remember when you said all these things and made all these promises. So just to build on what everyone else said, in addition to holding each other and other people accountable, let's hold the institutions accountable to us too, because they made a lot of promises to Black folks this summer.
I like that idea of using performative allyship and turning it back on them as a form of activism in and of itself. That's brilliant. Dr. Akila, a question from the audience. You talked a lot about different forms of rage that were grounded in scholarly work over the years, which was really informative. Do you think there's a new kind of rage emerging as Black female athlete activism moves and progresses from this summer and forward?
You know, I dropped in the response as well that I don't necessarily see it as a new kind of rage that will come forward. It's my hope that we will, as Black women, will allow to be our full selves. We will allow to be fully human and be able to express the range of emotion that humans are supposed to. And in that, in being our full selves and being able to be happy and sad and angered, as again, I say there's a difference between being an angry Black woman and a Black woman who's angry, right? And so it's gonna be, I don't see a new rage, you know, taking form, but I'm hoping that, you know, through this presentation and through discussions with others, that we can be and have that opportunity to express ourselves and for others to allow us to express ourselves, because living with anger and angst and anxiety and, you know, getting to the point of depression and thoughts of suicide ideation are very real outcomes as well. And if we can't be our full selves, we're not able to really walk in our purpose and be all that we can be. I mean, we've seen some amazing women that I showcased that, you know, were able to use their platform as athletes to achieve greatness as, you know, NCAA champions and world champions and Olympians. And they've done that in the struggle, but I wonder how many more would be on those podiums, you know, would be the leaders, would be athletic directors, would be professors, if they were allowed to be, you know, their full selves in these spaces.
Anybody else want to jump in on that? And then I have one last question before we wrap it up. Okay, Dr. Neff, this one's for you. You talked a lot about the WNBA. I love your question about professional sport should follow the WNBA. I love that. Someone asked, with all the hype and visibility that Sue Bird and Megan Rapinoe got this summer for various aspects of being great athletes and LGBT advocates and out wife, married to each other, professional athletes and in the wobble, do you think that their hype and visibility had been damaging to Black WNBA LGBTQ women because the focus was a lot on them?
That's a deep question. That's a deep question. It's a good question. It's a deep question. So I have a couple of thoughts. I think one thought that I have is it has been interesting looking at the WNBA this summer and even looking at the social justice activism work that's been happening, who has been getting the interviews for it, right? A lot of this blame to me goes to not necessarily those two players, because I also follow them closely and they've been pushing back and trying to say, I'm going to tell this person to step forward. I'm going to give up my space and my time in the media for my Black, brown sisters that are doing the work. And society, media in general, just keeps pulling them back in. They keep pulling them back in and trying to center their white experiences as an ally even over the actual lived experiences of the Black women that are suffering through racism, et cetera, this summer. And I thought that was incredibly fascinating and also incredibly disheartening, right? So for instance, an example is Angel McCoughtry was the person, along with her business partner, I can't remember his name at the moment, but they were the ones who thought of the idea of putting the names on the back of the jersey and putting the Breonna Taylor name on the back of their jersey, say her name. That was sort of their idea. They started it on Instagram. They got some mock-up jerseys made. And then, of course, that was taken over by the league. And for most people, they just assumed that this was an initiative that was started by the league. That was a perfect opportunity for the league itself, it was a perfect opportunity for sports media to lift those women up. I mean, lift that woman up, lift Angel McCoughtry up, let everyone know that she's the one that came up with this story. And I felt like people just, again, the invisibility of being a Black woman came to the forefront again. So, you know, I won't say that their hyper visibility necessarily damaged the experiences or damaged the outcomes for the Black women in the WNBA, but I will say that it was quite noticeable that they were getting so much attention, and of those Black women who were actually leading major initiatives that were making huge impacts. I mean, people were requesting those jerseys, for instance, that had the Breonna Taylor name on the back or had Say Her name on the back. That was a significant initiative. So the fact that Angel McCoughtry didn't get any shine for that, in my opinion, is a major failure. It's a major failure, and it's some of the same sort of ways that we've seen of Black women becoming invisible and not getting credit where credit is due.
Thanks, Dr. Walker. So I have one final question for each panelist, and we're going to start with Dr. Nikki. If you, in one sentence, could give your best piece of advice to young Black women, women scholars, female athlete activists, what would your gem of advice be? Dr. Nikki.
Have the confidence to believe in yourself and what you are capable of. I think so often we doubt ourselves, and I think having that confidence and moving forward and not being afraid to make mistakes, because that is how you will grow and learn.
Awesome. Dr. G.
I would say, don't quit, don't stop. There will be a collision of your purpose, your passion, that will provide a platform. Don't quit, don't quit.
Thank you. Dr. Joyce.
There's pain in your purpose. So don't avoid it, embrace it, get help as needed. But think about how that pain is preparing you for a platform that's going to not only lift you up, but be a platform for lifting others up as well. So don't see the pain or the suffering or the silencing or the tokenism as a personal threat, but actually as a personal challenge to knowing yourself better, advocating for yourself more, and helping others to do the same.
Thank you. Dr. Walker.
I would say take your space, your due space in this world, your due space in your fields and the work that you do. Take your space, use your voice, and find your people, and understand that your people might not always be who you want your people to be, and might not come in the forms that you expect. So when I got to UMass, my people were mostly white people because that's who was in my department and that's who uplifted me and who supported me. But it's important to find your people, use your voice, and take your space.
Thank you. Dr. Akilah.
It took all my purpose responses to really find your purpose and live in your purpose. But I think another thing that I want to encourage young women my age, you know, those that are finding their path, is to know that this is a journey. And as a journey, you're going to take twists and turns. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to have positive and negative experiences, but bring each and every one of those with you, because those will continue to guide you towards, and I'm going to use it, your purpose.
A lot of really good wisdom tonight was shared by so many different perspectives. This panel was illuminating, inspiring, motivating, emotion producing. Thank you, panelists and moderator, Dr. Nikki. Each of you could have done your own webinar. I know that there was many people in the Q&A that said, we want to hear from everybody in their own webinar, and I could not agree more. And I want to end with the idea that this webinar is the starting point, not the end point. So thank you, attendees, for being a part of this. It was recorded. It will be available on our website. And if you would like to sign up for our e-news, you can do that on our website, where you can also donate to and support the Tucker Center in our continuation to make impactful events like these free and accessible. We would love to hear what you thought tonight, that resonated with you most, what stuck with you, what you will do. What was your call to action? Tweet it to us at Tucker Center and tag the other speakers that put their Twitter handles in the chat function to you. As you learned insights from these scholars, we invite you to action, to do what you can to lift up, to challenge, dismantle, become an ally, fight against multiple intersecting forces of gendered and racial oppression. Everybody, every person can do something, big or small, can do something to help change the system in which racism and sexism are embedded. On behalf of the Tucker team, thank you again, panelists. Stay safe, give yourself grace, support others, and let the data tell the story. Thank you.